Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. We'll be getting started here in just a minute. Good morning, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Artificial Intelligence and its Impact on Nonprofits and Schools. We'll be getting started in just a minute, but I want to take some time to go over the format of today's webinar. All phones have been placed on mute. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please use the Questions tab in the menu. We will address questions at the end of the webinar as time permits. We will also reach out to you to answer any questions we may not cover during the webinar. This session will also be recorded, and the recording will be sent out tomorrow after the webinar. If you're attending this webinar for CPE credit, you will need to answer all 3 polling questions that are presented throughout the webinar. You will then need to complete the post-webinar survey that will be emailed out tomorrow morning. Again, thank you for joining us. At this point, I would like to introduce today's presenter. Brian Berry is a director in our advisory services group. His role is to lead our analytics team on projects related to master data management, advanced analytics, and machine learning. I would now like to hand it over to Brian to begin today's presentation.
Thank you, Jared. Good morning and welcome. Jared is correct. That is my role. I'm someone who practices the art of data science on a daily basis in my role here at Bloom Shapiro. Now, before joining Bloom, one of my early positions in technology was actually at Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut. There I had the opportunity to work with some very, very bright people. The experience gave me many insights into the priorities of an educational institution. And even further back than that, in the days of AOL and Netscape, when the internet was not yet a thing, and dinosaurs roamed the earth, I suppose, I worked in professional theater. So after school, I spent many years in the not-for-profit sector. So if you're able to find someone more qualified to speak on the topic of AI in education and non-for-profits, please send me their contact information. I'd love to meet them. Anyway, I think that artificial intelligence is something that both nonprofits and educational institutions can and should be exploring. It's not simply for private enterprise or the largest corporations because, well, for many reasons, chief among them, the cost of implementation of AI solutions has continued to increase. Barriers to entry are lower than ever before, but the capabilities continue to increase. So my ask of you is that you keep an open mind. Since you're taking the time to join me this morning, I assume that is the case. And we know that AI can be beneficial to more than just the largest corporations because there are many not-for-profits that are using AI effectively today. And during today's discussion, we're going to talk about some of these AI applications. Ones we here at Bloom think are interesting and most convincing as being valuable. So at a high level, my topics today are: why is AI being used today? How can it help with the most complex problems faced by not-for-profits? And I'm going to speak specifically about fundraising and also advancing the mission, and also about the educational institutions, what they're doing in AI, how it's being used. Okay, hope that is acceptable to everyone. Before we get started, the term artificial intelligence is a little confusing, a little intimidating. Before we dive in earnest, I want to provide some brief, simple definitions so that we are all in a level playing field. First is machine learning. Machine learning is a foundational concept. It's kind of a building block for AI. Machine learning is where a computer is provided with data. The computer then learns the patterns in that data and then uses what it has learned to make predictions about data it has not yet seen. The simplest, most common example I can give here is the Amazon recommendation engine. We've all seen this, right? Where it claims that customers who like product X also like product Y. Well, we could also say that differently. We can say, I, the AI, predict that you, as a customer, will like product Y, but I don't know for sure because you haven't rated the product Y yet. So that's what machine learning is in its core. Deep learning is an advanced kind of machine learning, which has been, I would say it's been recently devised. It's a fairly recent phenomenon. But deep learning represents a pretty significant breakthrough in AI because it enables machines to, I guess I'll say, mimic human thinking more closely. Unlike a recommendation engine, a better example of deep learning would be facial recognition, because deep learning works well with image recognition and image processing. Bot technology is an application of several machine learning concepts which create a chat experience for a person. A person will converse in a chat window with an AI or an AI algorithm. I suspect everyone on this call has likely had some kind of encounter with a bot. We'll talk a lot about more about this in the next hour. And finally, cognitive services is a set of online tools which can be combined to build AI functionality into other software, like a website or an app. So hopefully that's enough information to keep everyone on today's call on a level playing field. Don't worry, we'll understand each of these quite a bit more as we progress today. So why is AI so hot right now? Why is everyone talking about it? And why should you, as a leader in your not-for-profit organization or educational institution, care? I think the answer fundamentally is AI has been successful. It's been successfully used to solve some pretty extremely complex problems. And because of that success, AI is becoming ubiquitous. It's becoming mundane. It's everywhere. And we humans are adjusting. We're rapidly adapting to new ways that we can interact with machines through AI. I think that we, and by we I mean our children, the digital natives, have a very new set of expectations about what computers can and should do, and we should be aware of that. So examples, right? AI is powering facial recognition technology, which are being used to address, among other things, significant problems in information security. I remember 5 years ago, one of the biggest problems in IT security was a simple misplaced smartphone. Today, I hardly ever hear about it. So our smartphones are more secure because of AI. AI is being used to recognize human speech. Devices in our homes respond to the sound of our voice, carrying out some commands, Alexa, Echo, whatever you prefer. And executing a verbal command, though, is a lot easier than understanding nuance, understanding rhetoric, or, God forbid, irony. But AI is getting there, too. It's getting better. Marketing firms can take millions of examples of social media content and ask an AI to tell us how our customers feel about us, or our new product line, or some new marketing campaign. AI is being used to find the right information. Several years ago, 60 Minutes ran a piece on IBM's Watson AI, which performed, I remember, quite well on Jeopardy, a show I know and love. They reported that Watson was being used to advise physicians on possible treatments for cancer. Watson was able to search through enormous stacks of clinical research findings in seconds, predicting efficacy, making recommendations for treatment to physicians. Kind of mind-blowing, kind of amazing. So in this case, AI is better at performing a task that humans could do, but human intelligence cannot do it fast enough. It can't read through all of those clinical studies fast enough. For me, and I work quite a bit in the manufacturing sector, I'm seeing our clients applying AI to make very complex production decisions much faster. We're working with process manufacturers to predict outcomes from data collected in very early production stages, even raw materials. Sometimes selecting the best raw material from inventory can have a huge impact on the properties of your finished goods. And so in the manufacturing context, AI is helping our clients make better decisions early, save money later. So when someone asks me, what is AI? I don't respond with, AI is robots. At the end of the day, AI is about automated recognition, automated facial recognition, language recognition, emotion recognition, or situational recognition. Recognition is a skill that can be acquired if you review enough examples of the thing you're trying to recognize. Now, before we go much further, I do want to recognize, because I'm sure I have many people on the call today who are very intelligent, pay attention to the news, and potentially listen to TED Talks. There is a public debate going on right now about where all of this is going to lead us. Specifically, I remember just 2 weeks ago I was listening to a TED Talk. Will humans ultimately create an artificial intelligence which it can no longer control? Now, I think that is a fascinating discussion, but since I'm not a philosopher or a public policy analyst, I don't want to contribute to that conversation today. What I do know is companies are using this technology to solve complex problems now. So that's where I'd like to remain focused. And one of the complex problems we've discussed, I want to focus on the language processing for just a bit longer, because I think language understanding is a powerful capability of AI, and it's highly relevant to our discussion. I think it's obvious that language processing for humans involves two key skills, reading and writing. These are pretty essential skills, but they are quite separate. And so too is this true for AI. Reading in AI is called natural language processing, or NLP. NLP is used to ascribe meaning to words. Let me give you an example. I've got a sentence here. I love my dog because he is so friendly. That sentence does not mean a whole lot to a computer, but natural language processing would take that sentence and determine it's a sentence with a positive statement about the speaker. The dog is the object of affection, things of that nature. Natural language processing is about figuring out what the other party really means from that sentence. And writing in AI is called natural language generation. This is how an AI writes. It assembles data or information into something we would recognize as linguistics. When you assemble a package of reports for your stakeholders, your board of directors, your alumni organization, you often include some narrative. Here are, for example, here are the key points or the takeaways for this report. Natural language generation is something we have seen to generate reports for a board of directors. Now, let's talk about a little more concrete example. If you've ever interacted with a chatbot, then you've seen these two kinds of AI capabilities working in tandem to solve a complex problem. Many organizations today have developed chatbots so that they can interact with users on their websites. The bot, you'll go to the website, the bot will ask you, how can I help you? Or would you like to see a sample? For service desk applications, a bot can be very useful. And bots can be used internally as well. I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we interact with bots here at Bloom Shapiro. And at this point, I think it's time for our first poll question.
Again, if you are taking this webinar for CPE credit, you must answer all 3 polling questions. We're going to keep this one open for about 5 more seconds. Great. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Jared. Oops. Let me get back to the next slide here. So another reason why we're talking about AI now is that the implementation costs continue to go down. The so-called big tech firms have been eager to share these AI best practices with the world. You may find that surprising, but I think the reason is that they want to promote AI and make it more mainstream. Now, an example of this sharing is something that Google has created and released, which is called TensorFlow. TensorFlow presents a remarkable breakthrough in AI capabilities, most notably in image recognition. We talked briefly about deep learning. That's AI that's designed to mimic human cognitive function. It's also referred to as neural network or convolutional neural network, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that's all TensorFlow. Anyway, TensorFlow is open source software, which means it is freely available to use. And as a result, a significant ecosystem of AI developers and startups are using it to build services and apps. Another example is something from Microsoft, which I work with and my team works with as well, called cognitive services. Cognitive services are AI capabilities which are bundled into online services which you can use just as you would a public utility. So I'll give an example. If you use Office 365 or Google Docs, these are online services which anyone can purchase. For example, let's say you had a collection of images and you wanted to find the human faces in those pictures and ascribe some attributes to the face. Gender, for example, male or female, an estimate as to the age of the person in the picture, their relative mood in that particular setting. That's an example. So in that example, you would then take those images and you would pass them to a cognitive service, and the service would process the data and respond with information about that. That's an AI capability that's developed, and it's hosted by someone else. You don't have to build any of that. It's something that you can use on a consumption model to address a complex problem you may have. Now, since these platforms like TensorFlow, open source software, or open services exist, there are opportunities for startup companies to incorporate them into their services. And we are seeing an absolute explosion of private companies offering digital services with some AI angle. Some of these services are baked into existing products or services. So an example of this might be a CRM system, or in your case, a donor management system, which recognizes some data in the donor management system that says, hey, this donor should be contacted, or we should take some action with this donor. This donor hasn't been spoken to, or we have some reason to believe that. But on the other hand, there's some startups that are just developing completely new business models around low-cost online services that can address industry-specific problems. That's pretty exciting, I think. My overall point is that innovation in AI is leading to new startups which can provide services, and that marketplace is very competitive right now. Now, to be clear, I am not recommending that you immediately begin recruiting a team of data scientists to begin creating the next big thing in AI. That could be quite expensive. If you don't have a clear picture of the complex problem you're trying to solve, then you'll probably be disappointed. When we speak to clients about artificial intelligence or machine learning, we always try to drive to a sharp question. I'll define that a little bit later when we talk about services, but a sharp question is essentially taking a conceptual problem and trying to determine, is there a question that we can answer with data? Can we predict that this donor will give in the next week, for example? That would be a sharp question. There are AI services available to help not-for-profits and educational institutions address fundraising, for example. So let's start there. Oh, I did it again here. Excuse me. There we go. Fundraising is a complex problem. I'm confident that for most non-for-profits, it is a top priority. If it were easy to do, I guess all of them would be flush with cash. But of course, we know that raising enough capital to fund operations is a real challenge. There's the problem of engaging with donors. donors, engaging with them at scale. And how can you know what it is that that donor wants to know about you without talking to them? Wouldn't it be great if you had an experienced fundraising professional or even your executive director who could meet with each and every one of your major donors? Or for educational institutions, perhaps it's a dynamic speaker or a fellow, someone who's working on groundbreaking research. Now, there are many ways to reach potential donors. I'm sure many of you are using these channels to reach them now, whether they're alumni magazines or periodicals, maybe e-blasts, electronic newsletters, invitations to events. Social media has helped with this. It's helped to expand the reach. You can reach those individuals on social media. You can promote your events on social media, but it's also crowded the marketplace, making it more and more difficult to get the attention of the people who want to support you. I mean, when you're trying to engage with those supporters, you're trying to understand, who are they? What do they want to know about you? Why do they give? What's their story? What's their connection to your organization? You could probably tell that I'm a technology person and not a professional fundraiser, but I know at least that those are the questions that you want answered. And in order to meet each one of them, whoever your rainmaker is would need to meet donors wherever they are. So can AI help with this? AI services for fundraising. Imagine you're a fundraiser. You come to your office in the morning, ready to do work for the greater good, full of energy. You open up your email software of choice. You find an email dropped into your inbox, written to the right donor at the right time for you to edit and send in a few clicks. I'm describing a service called First Draft. First Draft delivers a proactively written email for your frontline fundraisers. Obviously, behind the scenes, there are robust algorithms used to identify the donor that you most need to speak with today, and it sends you an email that you can send to them. Okay, so that's one example. How amazing would it be to arrive at work each week with a plan for your outreach? I mean, that seems like a significant challenge. You have limited resources. I don't know how many organizations on this call develop weekly fundraising plans, but it seems a sensible thing to do if you only had the time. Could AI produce a weekly digest email that helps you more efficiently manage your portfolio? Help you prioritize the right donors who, again, need to be spoken to at the right time to raise more money? Now, how about travel planning? How much time do you spend planning and managing travel to see donors? I'm sure we've all wanted to say, well, we just need to travel a little smarter, not travel harder. That's not easy to do. But now you're probably asking, well, hold on, Brian. I mean, how can AI possibly do this? How can an AI know more about my donor base than I do? Well, the answer is data. The right kind of data, sure, and as much as you can provide. Typically, this data will come from a donor management system. I think I've already referred to as a customer relationship management system, or CRM. So hopefully you're understanding my jargon that a donor management system is a CRM for not-for-profits. Fundraisers are going to spend an inordinate amount of time cultivating and soliciting gifts. Their hectic schedules don't leave time to thank their top or mid-level donors in a meaningful, personalized way. But we know this is essential, and AI can help. So AI allows leaders who aren't in traditional fundraising roles, maybe they're deans, board members, pastors, department heads, program managers, athletic directors, to more seamlessly contribute to an organization's overall fundraising. So this is the picture I have on the screen here is an example from a company called Gravity. I think that's how they pronounce it. Maybe it's Gravity. I don't know. It's a company dedicated to helping non-for-profits improve their fundraising with AI. Just an example, not an endorsement. No promotional considerations have been given to Graphene, but they work with all major CRMs, including Blackbaud, including Razor's Edge, including Salesforce, many other fundraising CRM tools. And since it needs all of that data, machine learning tools need data to learn from. I think it's pretty powerful when you have an AI that can connect directly to your donor management system. Okay, now I'm going to say something that probably might be a little challenging or even crazy to some, but how can you engage prospective students or donors in a 24/7, any day of the year, any place that they want to be manner? Well, one idea is to train a chatbot to have a dialogue when your donor is ready. Crazy, right? I mean, how could a chatbot be more effective in communication than a human? How could a machine be an effective fundraiser? I mean, again, I'm not a fundraising expert, but I know that fundraising is a process. People don't just show up on your doorstep ready to write a check. They want information. Younger constituents, like prospective students, this may be information about some of your housing options, some of your athletic programs, some of your academic departments. For older constituents, parents maybe, they don't like searching through pages and pages of websites. For donors of any age, they need a pathway to the front door. They need an introduction. They need to enter your fundraising pipeline and funnel. And since your most effective communicators cannot be everywhere, prospective donors want to be met where they are. So with that, let me introduce Al, the fundraising bot. Al is a conversational AI. We've already referred to this as a chatbot. Al can have informative, authentic conversations with your constituents. Al can be fully trained for a wide variety of enrollment or fundraising conversations, applying for admission, financial info, alumni events, giving days, nearly any kind of conversation. Now, I just used a new word there. I used the word trained, so I want to stop and describe what I mean by that. So Al is trained by using data that you provide to that service and learns about your organization. Al can be branded with your school colors or any sort of persona that you want to emulate for your frontline fundraisers. And Al is given access to all the information about your events, your academic programs, your mission, so that it can have that conversation with individuals or answer their questions about whatever it is that they want to know about your not-for-profit organization. You know, chatbots are pretty amazing today. They can be used for more than just talking to donors, parents, or students. You know, some chatbots are simply used to help constituents find information quickly. One of my non-for-profit clients is currently experimenting with more of a Google search-like experience for the constituents they serve. This is a social services organization with a broad range of services. Right now, when a user goes to search for information, and I think this is generally true, they're often searching in complete sentences. They're not using keywords. They're not using wildcard searches, right? But in the information that this organization has, they think about it in terms of a taxonomy of keywords, metadata about their services. So how do you marry those two? Well, they're using one of Microsoft's cognitive services called LUIS. I think we always have to give these AIs some sort of personal name. LUIS is LUIS, Language Understanding IS, something I'm not really sure what the last two are, but it's a cloud-based API service that it applies custom machine learning intelligence to a user's conversational natural language text to predict the meaning, so natural language processing, right, and pull out relevant detailed information. Now, here at Bloom, we're also using bots internally. We use bots to access our internal information. So if we want to find out who at Bloom Shapiro has experience with artificial intelligence, the bot responds, hopefully, something like, let me put you in touch with Brian Barry or some other expert in a certain industry. And it's very, very helpful and useful and natural for us. Okay, so with that, I think we're on to poll question number 2, and I'll let Jared put that up.
Thanks, Brian. The poll question is up now. Again, if you're attending this webinar for CPE credit, you must answer all 3 questions. So this will be question number 2. Keep it open for about 30 seconds or so here. About another 5 or 10 seconds here to get in your answers. Thank you. Great, perfect. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Jared. So I want to transition from fundraising over to the topic of advancing your mission, as I suspect that's probably also a very high priority for most of the people on this call. You know, the advancement of a not-for-profit or an educational mission is also a complex problem. In a global world today where our services need to scale, how can you maximize your outreach? Could you use AI to better predict your costs or forecast the future in some way? Well, there are a number of very interesting examples in the world today about organizations doing just that. I don't know that any of these are perfect fits to what you're trying to do, but I think now that we have a foundation in what AI is and what machine learning is, you can better understand what's really going on here and make some connections to your mission. Let's start with Amnesty International. Amnesty International is using AI for their particular mission to illuminate the scale of violence and abuse towards women on Twitter. They use crowdsourcing, data science, and machine learning in their tool called the Troll Patrol. So how does this work, Brian? Well, Amnesty has collected tens of thousands of tweets that have been sent to female politicians in India. For each task, so each one of those gets anonymized and sent to an individual, a human, we could call them citizen data scientists, if you will, and asks that person to identify whether it contains abusive content or problematic content. Now, most of the tweets are in English or Hindi, so if you go onto the site and you want to contribute to the project, you'll be asked to choose whether you speak English, whether you speak Hindi, whether you speak both. So again, I'm using some terms here. I better go back and make sure I'm defining them. So in AI circles, this is called classification. We're labeling data events and telling the machine that this is good or this is bad. Okay, so we're training it, and we need human intelligence in order to do that. And the people who do this are citizen data scientists. They're people who are taking data and labeling it for the AI service. You know, crowdsourcing is another way to think about this, right? You don't need to be qualified in political science, for example, to know whether something is hateful or positive. You just need to speak English or Hindi. Actually, if you think about it, you and I are citizen data scientists all the time whenever we pick out the stop signs on a website to prove we're not a robot. We're using so Amnesty International is using cutting-edge data science and machine learning technologies, and out of this, they get a quantitative analysis of the unprecedented scale of online abuse against women in the world today. Pretty exciting, pretty cool stuff, and a great example of AI solving a complex problem at global scale. Now, if you're an organization who works with the deaf, AI can help you deliver services or enable deaf people to communicate with hearing people more naturally. Obviously, American Sign Language is the natural language choice for most hearing impaired individuals. The signers, however, can have serious problems communicating with persons who are not signers. So the goal of a machine or AI, of a recognition system, would be to allow real-time communication with individuals that are not fluent in ASL. And there are actually many academic projects and some apps that are working simultaneously to accomplish this. Each are specific to a specific person's language, right? Some apps are better at translating into English, others into German or Swiss or French. So anyway, imagine you're trying to communicate with a person and you discover that they want to communicate in sign language. So you open up an app on your phone and you point the camera at the person. Now, this app is going to use deep learning, right? That's the technology we talked about earlier. And it's going to recognize the images that come through that camera. It's going to find the person's body, the head and the torso, with some help from you. Okay? Then, now that it's got that sort of baseline of where the person's body is, it's going to classify each movement as corresponding to an ASL word. Again, classification. Now, the other end of the conversation is also helped. The microphone on the phone can be used by the app to listen to a speaker, pick out the keywords using natural language processing, and then play that conversation out in ASL visually on the screen for the sign language person. So hopefully what I've just said is both amazing and understandable, but seeing is believing. So I encourage you to check out it's called the ASL Translator. It's on iTunes App Store and Google Play. Again, not an endorsement. There are other apps to choose from, but this one gets 4 stars and is about $5 to purchase. Okay, this one I think is really also amazing as well. I was stunned recently to learn that approximately over $200 billion is spent on mental health annually. And as more people reach old age, obviously the prevalence of certain health conditions, such as dementia, is expected to push that figure even higher. So the medical community is thinking about how to address this, how to scale against this problem. Now, the costs associated with treatment, many individuals experience health problems and they don't receive any timely professional input. There's cost, there's also the stigma associated with mental illness. And meanwhile, chatbots are improving. They're becoming more and more human-like and natural. They offer different language options. So you might have an AI named Emma who speaks Dutch. And it's a bot that's designed to help with mild anxiety. But Kareem speaks Arabic. And he's been assisting Syrian refugees struggling to cope with, war. The fleeing of the atrocities of war. So one of these, an academic institution created something. It was a randomized controlled top trial. They called this, you ready for it? The Woebot. WOEBOT. And the Woebot showed after 2 weeks that participants experienced a significant reduction in depression and anxiety. And a high level of engagement was observed with individuals using the bot nearly every day. And I think this Woebot is available on Facebook. Another example, Silicon Valley startup X2AI is a company promoting its psychological AI product named Tess. And Tess performs CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is evidence-based treatment for those experiencing burnout, rather, with caregiving. I'm starting to wonder if maybe a bot could act as a virtual counselor for stressed out students. If you're at an institution with high demands or students that travel from a far distance away from their family, a virtual counselor sounds like a great idea. Let's transition over to education with that. How about education? Will these bots replace teachers one day? Well, I personally don't think so because I've had some amazing teachers in my life, but there has been an explosion of AI-enhanced online services for students and teachers. I think that AI helps in two major ways. First, AI can recognize a student's personal customized need and automate a customized learning plan for that student. Obviously, it does that by first assessing a student's profile up front, some sort of assessment or test, then offering a customized learning plan for that student. So one example of that would be Thinkster online. This is a really great capability because it enables teachers to reach students who need more attention or students who learn in certain ways which may not be recognized as or preferable for the teacher. A teacher's only human after all. They may have certain preconceived notions that certain styles of learning work and others do not. I'd like to pause here to tell a little bit of a personal story. My daughter, Fiona, is currently an excellent student, but when she was in elementary school, she was diagnosed as dyslexic. Now, we have very good schools in the town where I live, and so she did receive a good bit of attention. I don't mean to denigrate that, but the thing that helped her most was a new pair of glasses. I remember the special ed teacher insisting that she didn't need glasses. And today, she is a voracious reader with those wonderful glasses. And I say that only to say that human teachers have human bias. Now, I also want to make sure I say the other end, which is that AI does not make us immune from bias. In fact, the biggest gotcha with AI is that we need to be careful because AI can reinforce bias. If we train AI with data which reinforces our bias, we'll end up with an automation which looks it looks too much like Netflix. If you're a boy, then we will give you a personalized reading plan heavily slanted towards math or science or other such nonsense. So it can help with that. It can help with the elimination of bias if it is used responsibly. Second, we've already talked about the fact that AI is getting really good at understanding language. So we shouldn't be too surprised to learn that AI is being used to teach language. It's being used to teach people to write better. Some of these tools work in coordination with Google Classroom to improve language skills, build more complex sentences, proofread, comma placement. A great tool for English as a second language students. Check out quill.org, Quill. I've also seen an online community using language recognition AI to help students with their homework. So basically, students type in their homework questions into a chat window, and the bot will read the question and attempt to answer the question and provide an explanation. So with a large community of students, there are hundreds of millions of questions posed and a lot for the AI to choose from. This is called Brainly, Brainly. Fiona does not yet know about it, I think. Last one I'll mention is a company which condenses textbooks into shorter content. So processes a lot of language in a textbook and gets to the point. When I was younger, we called these Cliff Notes. Today, they're built with AI. Okay, last poll question, and then we'll get to the big finish.
Again, if you are attending this webinar for CPE, you will need to answer all three questions. The poll is open right now, so this is the final question here. Thank you. Then again, during this poll time, if you do have any questions for Brian, please feel free to put them in the questions tab, and we'll try to get to them at the end here as we start to wrap up. So we're going to keep the poll open just for about 5 more seconds here, and we'll be good to go. So thank you again for everyone for participating.
Okay, thanks, Jared. AI is a capability which comes from digital transformation. So saying that a little differently, AI projects start with data. If you don't have it, you need to start collecting it. You may find that your personnel are threatened by the concept of AI. I mean, they're worried about their call center jobs or jobs perhaps curating your services. So if AI still seems extremely complex or not something your organization would easily adapt to, then I'd like to leave you with a smaller, perhaps more easily achievable goal. And this is the topic of advanced analytics. Advanced analytics, also referred to as data visualization, can help promote your mission. Data tells a story when it is paired with visual information. Here I've just grabbed a good example of how data can promote a mission. It's a dashboard which has been made publicly available by the Elizabeth Glasser Pediatric AIDS Foundation. And essentially what you're seeing here is the scope of the outreach of their services, their impact. How many people are they helping and who are they? And obviously some interactive maps. Well, it may not be obvious, but this dashboard is interactive. And if you check it out, you can go and you can sort of slice and dice this data set by a number of different countries. It uses a service that's called Power BI. With Microsoft Power BI, users can create these dashboards and publish them to a public website, enabling them to communicate the important issues, drive real-time decision-making, demonstrate impact, and gain important support from its constituents. Many not-for-profits are eligible to receive a Power BI subscription for free. So this is not a business intelligence tool which is going to break the bank. Okay? So with that, how can you get started taking advantage of AI? Generally, Bloom is here to help you by helping you understand what your complex problems are. Probably know many of them. Is it fundraising? Is it student retention? Is it cost forecasting? We can help you take that problem from concept to sharp question. Can we predict student attrition rates from data collected in the dining hall, for example? Then we help you identify whether or not you have that data. If you do not have the data, then we can put together a plan to collect and label the data that you have. And finally, we can help you evaluate whether an AI is effective enough to be impactful. In other words, is there demonstrated what we would call information gain from the AI? Can it be put into real-world practice? Will the timing be sufficient for you? Now, if you need something a bit more tangible, we can also offer 2 one-day workshops. The first is called Bot in a Day, and the goal of this workshop is to create a bot trained on your data, take it for a spin, prove it out, determine if you want to proceed. Dashboard in a Day is our Power BI workshop. The goal of this is to provide baseline training in the tool for business analysts, and then build something from your data and start telling your story. Both of these workshops are non-technical exercises, though you will need IT support in order to access the data that will be so necessary for training the machine learning model. Okay? So with that, Jared, that's the end of my content for today, and I'll take any questions.
Yeah, Brian, so one thing came in here is, it says, I'm a smaller nonprofit organization, not to the size of Amnesty International, that you gave the example of there. Are these capabilities still things we can do at a smaller level?
I think that's a great question and very relevant. And part of the reason why we decided to do this webinar was to make some of these capabilities visible and available to the not-for-profit community. I think that if you have a CRM or if you have a donor management system, and I guess the question I would ask is, do you feel that you're using it effectively? Are you getting the information that you need to support your fundraising? And if you don't have, that's an important question, because if you don't have data which can be used to train your AI, then the return on your investment is going to be disappointing. So I would say if you're a not-for-profit that's invested in a donor management system, then you probably have the means to use an AI to be more effective with that data. If you don't have a data management system, a donor management system, then some of these may be a bit out of your reach, and you may need to just sort of look for third-party services. I don't have any specifics on, for example, Gravity, what that costs, but it's something that you should be looking into.
Another question is, you mentioned something about a travel AI. How does that work?
Right. So I think the answer is, AIs work from a broad set of data. So, in order to effectively, if you think about like a travel AI, in order to effectively recommend a travel schedule, that's going to need to essentially calculate the quickest route. And it may need public data in order to do that. So whether that's from the airline industry, maybe that's the train schedule. So in order for that to really work, you're going to need to merge data sets, take data from the public, take data from your internal data donor system. So pair that with information that it's gleaned about who are the donors you most need to reach. Merge that information with where they live and their likelihood to attend events. But that information is enough then to make a recommendation and automate that recommendation.
Great. Those were the two questions that we've had come in. We'll leave it open for about another 30 seconds or so in case anyone else has any other last-minute questions they'd like to get in. But if not, we'd like to thank everyone for attending today. You'll receive an email tomorrow with a copy of the slides, a recording, the evaluation that's required for CPE, and you'll also have Brian's contact information. So feel free to reach out to Brian directly with any questions you might have. So again, thank you for joining us today.